What's up, my comic comrades? A few weeks ago I told you we'd be covering the new House of X and Powers of 10 comic series once they hit the halfway point. Well, both books are now 3 issues in, so as promised, we're going to kick things off today by breaking down the first 3 issues of House of X. Then we'll do the same for Powers of X later this week, so be on the lookout for that one as well. But we also want to thank Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this episode. Oh hey, do you like immersive RPG games, dark fantasy storylines, epic battles with a crap ton of powerful champions? Yeah, I know you do. That's why you should be playing Raid Shadow Legends. It's a freaking dope game that you need to be playing. For those of you who don't know, we've been preaching Raid Shadow Legends on the show for months, but it's easily one of the best mobile collection RPG games ever created, and the word is spreading rapidly. It's 100% free to play, and they're constantly updating and adding to the game. No matter what your preference is, Raid has something for everyone. Amazing graphics, strategic gameplay, PvP battles in the arena, and 400 champions from 16 different factions for you to collect and customize. Of those champions, my favorite is Kale from the Dark Elves faction. Once you level up his power set and rank, he's an absolute beast in battle. His Acid Rain Strike in particular can wipe out an entire lineup in one shot. Anyway, they also just added several new features like Faction Wars, where you could build teams of champions to battle new bosses for new rewards and artifacts. And guess what? They have more updates with even more new content coming over the next 6 months, like a tag team arena, a new clan boss, and more. I'm telling you, if you haven't already, you want to jump in on Raid Shadow Legends, but you don't have to take our word for it, because with over 200,000 reviews, Raid has almost a perfect score on the Play Store. Go to the video description now, click one of the Raid links to download the free game, and you'll instantly get 50,000 silver with your download and a free epic champion within a week as part of the new player program. Then once you're up and running, come and join our clan, Variant Nation. Good luck, and we'll see you there. All right, with all that covered, let's talk some House of X. First off, House of X and Powers of 10 do intertwine, but you don't have to read both titles to understand what's going on. They live on their own. But if you do want to know the big picture and know all the details, then yes, you should read both series. Also, this should be obvious, but clearly there's going to be spoilers galore for the first 3 issues of House of X. And now that you've been warned, let's get into it. The issue starts off with Professor X next to a large alien-looking tree, where it looks like versions of Jean Grey and Scott Summers and probably the other 5 original X-Men have hatched out of some sort of cocoon. To which Xavier says, "To me, my X-Men," which is just a little bit creepy. The next page then shows us that mutants like Colossus, Storm, and so on have planted these flowers all over the world and even the blue area of the moon over the last several months. We are then brought to present day to what's called the Jerusalem habitat, where Xavier has invited a bunch of diplomats from all over the world. Once inside, said diplomats are greeted by the Stepford Cuckoos, who are clone daughters of Emma Frost and powerful telepaths. And I gotta say, Stepford Cuckoos is quite a ridiculous name. Anyway, the diplomats think they are there to meet and talk to Charles Xavier, but they find out he's not there and instead are greeted by Magneto in a spiffy white rendition of his costume. He gives them the tour and we find out that the Jerusalem habitat is just one of many around the world. You see, those plants they were planting earlier in the book grew into what's now called Krakoa, the mutants' new home, a place where only mutants are allowed to enter and live. Humans are only allowed to enter if accompanied by a mutant. We also learn that the whole reason these ambassadors were invited by the mutants were because of 3 drugs invented by the mutants. One that extends human life by 5 years, another that prevents diseases of the mind, and a third which is the most effective adaptive antibiotic the world has ever seen. But the mutants will only share it with the human race if they recognize Krakoa as a sovereign mutant nation. This would also give all mutants amnesty, meaning no other nation would be allowed to prosecute a mutant for any crime. You can't touch me! I got amnesty. Anyway, while Magneto is continuing to give the ambassadors a tour of the mutants' new nation, we see that it's not surprisingly way more advanced than anything on Earth. For instance, they can move from one Krakoa habitat to another on the other side of the Earth, or even on the moon in an instant via gateways grown by Krakoan flowers. Also, it's very important that you read all the chart pages and definition pages in the comic, because they actually tell you a lot about what's going on and what things mean. For instance, it's on one of these pages we learn that humanity only has 20 years left of being the dominant species. After that, mutants will be the majority on Earth and the new dominant species. Because of this discovery, humans kind of freak out and decided to create something called the Orcas Protocol. It's essentially a massive space station built near the sun that has been in the works for quite a while now. In short, the space station will be able to create super sentinels that will be able to eradicate mutants. Who runs this station? rogue human scientists, aka members of S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, S.W.O.R.D., and so on. And what's pretty cool is the base itself is actually built inside of a massive Sentinel head. Back on Earth, we then see Mystique, Sabretooth, and Toad stealing stuff from Damage Control, but they're quickly stopped by the Fantastic Four. At that point, Cyclops shows up and is like, yo, these are mutants, and I'm sure you know what amnesty means, right, Dr. Richards? It seems like Cyclops is going to get into a fight with them, but in the end, he just lets the Fantastic Four deal with Sabretooth to avoid a confrontation. Towards the end of the book, the Stepford Cuckoos, there's that name again, being telepaths, revealed that the ambassadors from all the nations have ill intentions and or are corrupt in one way or another. We also see that one of them came armed when they weren't supposed to, so Magneto uses his powers to take apart the gun, which is always cool to see. He then says, "Some would be offended at a wolf presenting as a sheep, but I have learned hard lessons from your kind, so I know the truth. You were all wolves." He continues to say something to the effect of, "It's good that all of you were here, so that you could run home to tell your masters what you've learned here. Charles Xavier has made you an offer, one full of grace and brotherly love, one that is also written in stone. This is not a negotiation. Things will be different now, and the sooner you realize the finality of your situation and the inevitability of ours, the sooner you will learn to be grateful for the things we are so generously giving you." Magneto finally says, "I summon you to this place for wholly superficial reasons," referring to Jerusalem. "You see, I know how humans love your symbolism almost as much as you love your religion. And I wanted you, I needed you to understand. You have new gods now." I know. How freaking cool is that? Talk about shaking things up in the X-Men universe and turning things upside down. It's just pretty cool to see the mutants go from pretty much extinction to now becoming the dominant species of Earth. As for issue 2 of House of X, it completely focuses on Moira McTaggart. And not only does it focus on her, apparently she's one of the most important characters in the X-Men universe now. Most X-Men fans know her as the only non-mutant to contract the legacy virus, or Charles Xavier's love interest. But this issue tells us she's much more than that. In fact, she's a mutant who has the power of reincarnation with a twist. Instead of coming back reincarnated as an animal or someone else, when she dies, her life just resets from the beginning, like the very beginning, in her mother's womb beginning. Because of this, she has memories of all of her past lives. This confused her early on, as she didn't even know why this was happening or that she was a mutant, until she saw Charles Xavier on TV. But when she flew to meet Professor Xavier, she died in a plane crash. And when she was reincarnated in her third life, she wasn't fond of Xavier, as she thought he was arrogant and had a god complex. So instead of confiding in him, she decided to work to become a scientist and develop a cure for the mutant gene. This ultimately led to Mystique and Destiny capturing Moira. Destiny is like, yo, if you continue down this path, I'll kill you, because my mutant power is seeing the future, meaning I know what you're gonna do before you do it. So make the right choices and help your fellow mutant, not destroy them. Destiny then has Pyro burn her slowly so she doesn't forget how dying like this feels.
Remember that in your next life, you bastard!
Once she was reincarnated again, she fell in love with Professor X and helps him. And we see images of the X-Men throughout the years, like the original 5 X-Men, the modern X-Men, the Phoenix 5 from the Avengers vs. X-Men comic, and so on and so forth. But to the point, she was there for all of that. After this, the comic shows us Moira in her 7th life, killing the Trask bloodline so that the Sentinels wouldn't be invented and eradicate the mutants. In her 8th life, she even teamed up with Magneto, calling him a necessary evil. But him and her were ultimately defeated by the X-Men, so in her next life, she teamed up with Apocalypse, taking a survival of the fittest approach, but guess what? The Sentinels still defeated Apocalypse and her. And then at the end of the issue, we are brought back to current day, where she's back with Xavier, telling him everything she's learned through all of her lives. Which brings us to current events with the Orcas Protocol, which in turn leads to the Master Mold, a self-aware factory that is capable of creating Sentinel drones, and the Mother Mold, a self-aware factory that is capable of creating the Master Molds, before ultimately leading to the Omega Sentinel, a human infected with Nano Sentinel tech, and Nimrod, a pure Nano Sentinel construct that hates mutants, is adaptive, self-aware, self-replicating, and is virtually indestructible. All of the above leads to mutants going bye-bye. It's important again to note that most of the information I just talked about is going to be found on the index pages, so I can't stress enough, you have to read those to understand everything that's going on. But all of this leads us to issue 3, where Xavier and Magneto are talking to Cyclops before he's sent off on a mission with the X-Men to stop Orcas and the Mother Mold, and of course, Nimrod from happening, which Xavier and gang only know about because of information given to them by future Moira. If any of this seems confusing to you, a lot of these loose ends will get tied up in the Powers of X comic, which we're going to be talking about in the next episode. So fear not, I got you. Anyway, Cyclops' strike team gets in a jet and heads to the Orcas space station. In between this, we see Sabretooth on trial for his crimes from the first issue. But Emma Frost soon shows up and is like, yeah, he's a mutant, and we're not going to have humans be the judge, jury, and executioner for our race. So he's coming with me. And after a nice little threat by Frost, they let him into her custody. Meanwhile, the X-Men are coming up on Orcas and their space station, preparing to take down the Mother Mold. The scientists, of course, spot them and are like, crap, It's the X-Men, all hands on deck. So they launch Sentinel drones from Mercury, but unfortunately, they're not going to be able to get there in time. And right after this, the X-Men's jet docks on the station. So in fear there's nothing Orcas is going to be able to do to stop the X-Men from destroying the mother molds, the captain of the Orcish Forge and husband to Dr. Gregor decided there was only one way to stop the X-Men, and that was to tear apart his energy blaster and convert it into a makeshift bomb. But this meant he would be killing himself once he detonated it. So he gave his wife a heartfelt goodbye saying, "I really wish we had some kids," and then pulled the trigger, killing himself and seemingly all the X-Men aboard the jet, as the comic ends. Talk about a pretty crazy cliffhanger, my friends, and this is just the first half of the House of X series. If you ask me, this has been a fantastic book thus far, and is really doing some cool stuff with the X-Men. I just love how it's reshaping the X-Men universe and what Jonathan Hickman is doing with the book thus far. It's actually refreshing because there's been so many X-Men books for so long, and it was kind of getting confusing and a bit stale. So I feel like this is resetting the status quo and giving us a solid new direction. It also gives diehard X-Men fans stuff to love, while also being a decent jumping on point for new X-Men fans. But with that said, I want to know your thoughts. Let us know what you think of the first 3 issues of House of X in the comment section below. First up for the week of the 11th, we have Moon Knight Annual 1. Kang the Conqueror has found a way to rewrite history in his own image. But when the chance to settle an ancient grudge against the Egyptian god Khonshu tempts Kang, the process is interrupted, and time and reality quickly go haywire. Now we have The Flash issue 78. If the Flash can't convince his fellow speedsters to unite and find a cure for the dying Speed Force, certain death awaits. Next we have Batman issue 78, in the first part of the City of Bane interlude. Batman receives help from an ally he thought he had lost for good, Catwoman. And finally we have Powers of 10 issue 4. Powers of 10 is a direct tie-in into everything I was talking about today. So if you like House of X and the X-Men in general, you need to be reading this title as well. But just like that, that's gonna do it for another episode of Variant. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out this one right here. And if you like what we're putting out, be sure to subscribe, it helps the channel. But I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things comics.